Being critical of a company that has profound impact on the lives of children all over the world seems to be the kind of scrutiny that society needs. Yet the writers of CNN are furious that you, I, and others actually view the House of Mouse with that kind of angle, with that sort of lens. They say Inside Out 2 is a win for Disney and proof they should be involved in the culture war. Folks today like shooting very dumb fish in a very short barrel. It's time to take down CNN. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Pro Channel, where we endeavor to explain entertainment, keep you ahead of the culture curve, and we do so in a way that the Hollyweirds just can't stand it. An IQ level that many of the drive-by journalists out there only dream of at night. They, of course, still seeking those triple digits. This is an article out of CNN by Brian Lowry. Folks, get ready. We are going full blast into this one because it deserves to be on blast, because it is full-blown dumb. It says Inside Out 2 fills Disney with joy, even if its culture war critics stay angry. Notice the framing right ahead, folks. If you are critical of Disney, you're angry. You're a mob. You're terrible. As emotions go, Disney's loudest critics might sound angry, but Inside Out 2 is bringing the studio nothing but joy. Preface to all of this, we here gave Inside Out 2 a 7 out of 10. We praised it because despite the fact that it uses anxiety as an emotion that should exist inside your head, which we think is dumb, we gave it a 7 out of 10 because for what it's trying to do, it's a decent film. It's not as good as the first one, by no means. It's not close to one of Pixar's best, but it's decent. And guess what? As a result of that, and probably also as a result of calling anxiety worry in many of the other countries of the world, Inside Out 2 is doing phenomenally well. It stays away from almost all of the woke stuff that's been in the most recent Pixar films that have destroyed them. So that should be a clear calling card to Disney. Hey, this is the way that you win. This CNN article, I think Brian Lowry has been listening to channels such as this, such as Valiant Renegade, Midnight's Edge. You get the idea. I think he's been listening. I think he's a listener. Brian, how are you out there? Apologies, Brian. It's not going to go well today. The Disney company has often found itself cast as a reluctant participant in the culture wars. Reluctant, my bohiney. This is a company that Bob Iger injected far-left, socio-divisive structures into that company as he was getting ready to run for president, which he did not do, but he was getting ready to, and he needed to go into the Democratic primaries. This is a company that has a thing called Reimagine Tomorrow, where they talk about in videos that they have a not-so-secret agenda. This is a company that has a program called Rise that we have detailed, which is giving grants only to people who are Muslims and who Disney identifies them as Muslims, because Disney is the arbiter of who gets to be Muslim and who does not. This is a company with a program called Stories Matter, which goes through and identifies anything that they view as being problematic inside the Disney parks and strikes those things down. And it's gone to such an extent that the Jungle Cruise is crumbling while they virtue signal with totems, and they've torn down Splash Mountain, the most popular ride in the world, and brought back Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which, by the way, folks, still does not work. This is not a company that is reluctant. This is a company that dove headfirst into the issue in Florida of determining that 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds should have state-sponsored curriculum tell them about bedroom issues from teachers sponsored by the state. It was overwhelmingly unpopular, but that was what the Disney company decided it needed to be involved in. It cost them $1 trillion. They tuck-tailed. Now they're giving money back to all the politicians again because everything about that was a horrible mistake for Disney. Reluctant, my bow-highness, yielding occasional calls for boycotts and proclamations the company has become too woke. Yet the explosive box office success of Inside Out 2, a movie that's not necessarily forthrightly woke, provides necessary perspective about a vast audience that remains hungry for Disney content, certainly enough to generate a major hit. Yeah, so was Barbie. Barbie was a hit. Same crowd, same audience. We've covered this. Same demographics, same young women going to see this as Barbie. That's an audience that's out there. Make something that's not in your face ultra woke, people will go see it. No joke. Granted, Those who regularly rail against Disney, which was drawn into a political battle with Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis beginning in 2022 over the state's so-called, and I don't say this, folks, because that's a propaganda name for the bill. It is literally, listen, if you don't even put the name of the bill in your article, then you are just a philanderer of mistruths. That's it. If you can't even put the actual name of the bill, like you could put the Parental Rights and Education Bill in there and then say, also known as, the don't say, and you could say that, right? But you would also need to then also put the other propagandist title from the conservative side, right? But they don't do that. They just go with the one that's suiting the narrative here, the don't say blank bill. And by the way, Disney was not drawn into a political battle. Disney actively chose, and Disney defended themselves in court, saying that they actively chose. This is a giant pile of manure. This article doesn't even say what Disney says about itself. This goes beyond pixie dusting. This is some kind of special. Have sought to rationalize the performance of the Pixar sequel, insisting its plot doesn't toe the woke line the way something like the studio's latest Star Wars series, The Acolyte, does. It's because it doesn't. I mean, you're going to have to give us okay, Brian, if you disagree, can you explain why? Because you don't in this article. You don't explain how it's not woke or how it is woke. Because facts and logic are just too difficult. Notably, a review bombing campaign has been waged against the latter, depressing its score on the critic aggregation site Rotten Tomatoes to almost comical levels. Again, folks, listen, Brian can sit here on CNN and pontificate about a review bombing campaign with zero evidence whatsoever. Fine, Brian. Go look at the ratings. Go look at the ratings. This show, The Acolyte, is being destroyed by a preschool cartoon about Jurassic Park on Netflix. You know how much time, Brian, we spend talking about the Jurassic Park preschooler cartoon on Netflix? 0 videos so far, Brian. You know why we don't talk about it, Brian? Because nobody's watching it. And because we always knew nobody was going to watch it. Because it's a cartoon dinosaur show for preschoolers. It's not Bluey. It's not Cocomelon. And that means it don't got no ratings. Sorry, Brian. So when the Acolyte is beaten by that, you know why we cover that? You know why we talk about it? Because this is frickin' Star Wars, Brian. Star Wars was the biggest franchise on the planet. Now it's big show of the year. This is supposed to be way bigger than Skeleton Crew. This is the big one, Big Kahuna, getting beaten by cartoon dinosaurs on Netflix, Brian. That's why we cover it. Because we follow the news. Because we're not involved in narrative building here. Because we're simply reporting on something that's a massive shift in entertainment. The biggest franchise on the planet is being destroyed by a cartoon preschool dinosaur show. Brian, look a little closer, though. And Inside Out 2 features an effortless emphasis on values like diversity and inclusion that help make Disney a target. There's not a single message in the movie about that. The only thing that's in there is, by the way, that there are vast numbers of people of different backgrounds all playing hockey in Southern California. That makes sense, but it's because of the ratios that Disney requires in its characters on screen. Now, Brian, you may not realize this, but one of the tenets of wokeism is that we must have tribalism, right? That's that tribalistic requirement that everybody is born with immutable differences, and therefore we are different in ways that we cannot even comprehend fully. There's these innate biases that exist. Riley is a little white girl who makes friends effortlessly with people of all backgrounds. That's anti-woke in that regard, Brian. There are other parts of the movie that are semi-woke. That's anti-woke. The Disney unit behind it, Pixar, also enjoyed a less ostentatious box office win last year with Elemental. It was a flop. Listen, all this clatter about how Elemental had this great hold of the box office, that's fine. It still flopped. Still lost them money. We know that. Brian doesn't actually research this stuff, apparently. Elemental's a flop. Lost money. That's not a win. It's never a win. A movie that used an allegorical relationship between characters made up of fire and water to explore bigotry. Yes, I said that incorrectly on purpose, Brian. I know how YouTube works. The immigrant experience and a love story about overcoming differences. It was also boring, and it was a flop, Brian. It was a flop. Say it with me, Brian. Can you say flop? Just like the fish in that barrel. Flop. Whatever the reason, and with the sequel coming 9 years after the original, whatever the reason, because Brian doesn't have time to figure these things out. With the sequel 9 years after the original, pent-up demand is surely apart. There's no denying Inside Out 2's results, with the movie adding $100 million at the North American box office during its second weekend, a record for an animated film, bringing its domestic total to $355 million, eclipsing Dune Part 2 as the year's top movie in just 10 days of release. Domestic, Brian, yes. But that's accurate. And again, we gave this film a 7 out of 10 and said, it's fine, it's good. And we talked about what was going to drive the viewership of this, which is young adult women. We've talked about this. Worldwide, the film's haul has ballooned to nearly 725. Inside Out 2 will almost surely join the increasingly rare list of 1 billion plus grossers since the COVID outbreak, which consists of sequels to Avatar, Top Gun, Spider-Man, and Jurassic World, as well as Barbie and the Super Mario Brothers movie. All right, folks, let's go through these real quick. Brian, he's real smart. Let's see which ones of these are woke. Avatar, not woke. Top Gun, anti-woke. Spider-Man, definitely not woke. Jurassic World, definitely not woke. Barbie, yeah, it's woke, but it's woke in a gentle way that women attach to. And that's the key here. Female-dominated franchises that were already female, pre-existent feminine, if you have them be gently woke, but not overtly, tremendously woke, they'll explode. No doubt. Super Mario Brothers movie, anti-woke. It's worth noting, by the way, so in other words, one of the films listed here is semi-woke, and the rest are not. Hard lesson to learn, Brian. It's worth noting Disney has consciously sought to shy away from engaging in political battles. Oh, my goodness. With CEO Bob Almighty, who rejoined the company in that capacity in 2022, telling CNBC in November, "We have to entertain first. It's not about messages." Right. So when they have the Disney Plus shows that during Pride that feature individuals of a very theatrical nature, and when that's available to the child accounts on Disney Plus, how's that on the message there, Brian? When Disney has little cartoon children of color battling against the evil police depicted in black and gray sort of terrorizing palettes, Brian, on the Proud Family Louder and Prouder. How's that for messages, Brian? In essence, Iger simply stated the obvious, that Disney, like any major corporation, prioritizes its profits and stock price. Well, Brian, why is the stock half what it was 2 years ago? Or are you so dense that you didn't even look that up? Come on, Brian. 2021, 2022, stock price double what it is today. Explain it, Brian. Can you? No, you can't. You don't actually study this stuff. This is a narrative. This is a puff piece intended to get low-resolution thinkers to agree with what you're saying. It's damage control for Disney out of CNN. That Disney, like any major corporation, prioritizes its profits and stock price, which are half what they were, which means trying not to alienate potential customers. Oh, really? That's what they're doing when the lead voice actress, the Mama Odie woman, who's on Tiana's Bayou Adventure, when she's out there screeching about mental illness and what conservatives will do. It's great. It's a great way to not alienate potential customers. By the way, might have some empty logs coming down at the opening of Tiana's. No matter how eager some of them are to be offended, Disney employees represent another constituency, which offers some context regarding why former CEO Bob Chapek finally chose belatedly and under pressure from them to criticize Florida and cost the company $1 trillion and take the stock into half. You're an idiot, Brian. Sorry. This is an overwhelming loss for the company. A huge, tremendous, ultra loss. It is BP in the Gulf loss. That's what we're talking about. The stock was cut in half, and they lost $1 trillion over the next century in that fight, Brian. Tail between legs. They lost every lawsuit. They dropped every charge, and they are currently governed by a new local government that is no longer them. They lost all of their special governmental powers in the state of Florida, Brian. They utterly, totally were beaten to a pulp in Florida, Brian. And with their stock, Brian. Inside Out 2 certainly looks like a triumph for Iger's strategy, while still conveying messages in a more subtle manner. Okay, so which one is it then? Which one is it? Are we about messages or not? Brian, you got to pick one. Tell me which one is it? And what is this subtle message that you believe is in here? Let us know. Indeed, summer 2024 is shaping up to be a banner one for Disney with the superhero satire Deadpool and Wolverine expected to another major attraction. Come on, Brian, at least write with grammar that makes sense. When the film opens in July, catering to an R-rated crowd that underscores the demographic reach of its assorted assets. Deadpool and Wolverine is going to do fine. It's going to do not as big as the biggest Marvel movies, but it's going to do fine, and maybe it'll break $1 billion. That's fine. That's where Disney used to be. So 2 films in a year, that'd be better than what has been. We'll take that, right? That doesn't mean that those who have turned Disney's mouse ears into targets. Oh, by the way, Brian, it stars 2 white guys. Sorry. Turn Disney's mouse ears into targets. And by the way, skin color doesn't matter. We're just saying that because it probably matters to you, and we know that. Into targets will be less inclined to rail against something like The Acolyte, distorting what the Star Wars show does and doesn't do in the process. So this is all about Acolyte whining. It has no ratings. Nothing Disney does that's woke gets anything. Lightyear bombs, Strange World bombs. You've got Turning Red bombing, right? We can keep going. You want to keep going through all the bombs they've had? You want The Little Mermaid? Yeah, it flopped. You want Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny? Yeah, it flopped. You want Marvels? Yeah, it flopped. They release something that's not woke, and Brian jumps to the defense and says, "Oh, it's secret woke. It's secret woke, and the Acolyte, it's doing great. The Acolyte's doing great. It doesn't matter that it's barely making any kind of ratings. It barely makes the top 10 in original content, a subcategory." Brian probably doesn't even know that. His handlers are giving him what he's got to say here. It's a reminder, though, that plenty of people still see in the Disney name the ideal of entertainment that they can share with loved ones. And that as long as the studio fulfills that implied contract, woke or otherwise, and that's Brian's thesis, Brian wants it to be woke. Brian wants it to be woke. He wants Disney to take a political side. He wants the company that makes children's content to be an activist player in shaping the way children see the world to Brian's point of view. That's what Brian wants. Brian doesn't want neutrality. Brian gets enraged when people stay away from the stuff that sucks, that's woke. Brian wants you to believe that the stuff that wins is woke. It's just subtly woke. He wants you to believe the Acolyte's a real winner, despite the fact it can't pay for the dinner of Lucasfilm. That's what he wants.
Grew up watching, all of the classics. They have been a huge, informative part of my life. But at the same time, I worked at small studios most of my career, and I'd heard, hear whispers. I'd heard things like, they won't let you show this at a Disney show. And I'm like, okay. So I was a little sus when I started. But then my experience was bafflingly the opposite of what I had heard. On my little pocket of Proud Family Disney TVA, the showrunners were super welcoming. Meredith Roberts and our leadership over there has been so welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda. And so I feel I felt it was, maybe it was that way in the past. I guess something must have happened in the last, they were turning it around, they're going hard. And then all that momentum that I felt, that sense of, I don't have to be afraid to let's have these 2 characters kiss. Let's in the background. I was just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness to if you see anything queer in the show, I'm proud of it. But I just was no one would stop me, and no one was trying. Just wherever I could, just basically adding queerness to if you see anything queer in the show, I'm proud of it. But I just was no one would stop me, and no one was trying. Just
Mickey and Friends won't be going broke anytime soon. Well, no, not as long as BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, all those stay behind it. That's true. But in terms of how the company is doing, I'd take a company that didn't cut its stock price in half in 2 to 3 years. I'd take that company. But good effort, Brian. Good effort for someone who cannot do better than this. It's probably your best. All right, folks, we don't mean to be mean. That's just the way it is. This is drivelous annoyance in terms of the article's quality. I give it an F. It's just, come on, Brian, do better. If you can. Folks, let us know if you think we did better. Click the like button if so. Share, subscribe, click it, stick it to the algorithms, hit the notification bell, drop a comment right on down below. Let us know your thoughts. And don't forget that the Pro Show is live today at noon Eastern Time, and we cannot wait to see you there. We'd love to have you with us in the audience. Turns out Elon Musk is on the attack against Kathleen Kennedy. We'll see how that's going. All right, folks, in the meantime, until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Yeah, I am so excited for Independence Day. You can taste the liberty and drink in all that 4th of July freedom.
Why? You're not an American, and you don't live in America. Not to mention, you're a troll, and they're from Norway.
Wait, you're saying that trolls can't have the spirit of America? How do you explain Leslie Headland? That'd also be like saying the Acolyte isn't Star Wars.
Well, I guess it's not bad to not be American and wish for that kind of freedom. But please, don't compare this situation to the Acolyte and it being Star Wars. Nothing's that bad.
Well, gosh darn it. You've given me something new to aim for.